What if I told you that a stunning military victory could also be a catastrophic failure? Today, we're diving into a pivotal but often overlooked battle from World War I, Neuve Chapelle. This was a fight that seemed to promise a way to end the war, but instead, it ended up creating the bloody blueprint for its very worst years.
So that's the real puzzle here, isn't it? How can you win and lose at the exact same time? It sounds impossible. But the Battle of Neuve Chapelle is the perfect, tragic example of this paradox, a battle where a brilliant plan worked perfectly and in doing so taught all the wrong lessons. Let's unpack how that happened.
To really get this, we have to go back to early 1915. You see, the war wasn't supposed to be like this. The fast-moving battles were long gone. What was left was the Western Front, hundreds of miles of mud, barbed wire, and trenches in a complete and unbelievably bloody deadlock.
I mean, millions of men were just stuck in this horrifying system of trenches. Anytime they tried to advance, it was a charge straight into machine guns, and the casualties were just catastrophic. The generals were getting absolutely desperate. They needed a new way of thinking, any new idea, to finally break this brutal stalemate.
And that desperate search for an answer led them right here, to Neuve Chapelle. This wasn't going to be another blind charge into the guns. No, this was something totally different. The first meticulously planned, large-scale British offensive of the war, and it was built on a truly revolutionary approach.
The plan itself was actually pretty brilliant in its simplicity. It had three main steps. First, map the enemy like never before. They were using this brand new technology, aerial photography, to create these incredibly detailed maps of the German lines. Second, forget the long, drawn-out bombardments that gave everything away. Instead, they would unleash a short, incredibly violent artillery storm to just vaporize the front line. And third, and this was key, the infantry would go in immediately after the guns stopped, punching through the gap before the Germans even knew what hit them. And you can just feel how modern this was for the time. For the very first time, they were mass-producing and handing out these super detailed aerial maps to the troops on the ground. This was a whole new way of fighting, a calculated, almost scientific approach to war that was designed to replace brute force with absolute precision. And this was the engine that was going to make it all happen. Overwhelming firepower. The secret wasn't just having a lot of guns, it was the insane concentration of them on a very, very narrow front. The idea was simple: total, localized annihilation of the enemy's defenses in just a matter of minutes.
So the stage is set, the plan is in motion, and on the morning of March 10th, 1915, the British unleashed their new way of war. And the result, at first, was, well, it was nothing short of a miracle.
Just look at this timeline. 7:30 a.m., the artillery storm begins. In just 10 minutes, the German barbed wire is gone, just erased from the landscape. 8:05 a.m., the infantry assault begins. British and Indian troops cross no man's land, and by 10 a.m., they haven't just captured the village of Neuve Chapelle, they have torn a massive 1,500-meter-wide hole in the German line. The plan had worked. It had worked perfectly. It was an absolutely stunning breakthrough.
But then, silence. The incredible momentum, gained so brilliantly, just evaporated. The breakthrough that was supposed to change the war just stopped. So what on earth went wrong?
Well, the problem was as old as war itself. The plan was modern, but the technology to control it on the battlefield just wasn't there yet. The British expected clear communication lines, but their own artillery barrage had shredded all the telephone wires, cutting the front line off completely. They hoped for a coordinated advance, but units got lost and disorganized in the smoke and chaos. Reinforcements were stuck for hours. The whole command system just completely fell apart.
And here's the truly tragic part. With all communication gone, the commanders back at headquarters were totally blind. They had no idea where the breakthrough had actually succeeded. So, in a fatal mistake, they sent their fresh reserves to the areas where the fighting was heaviest, the places the attack had failed, instead of pouring them through that massive wide-open gap. This disaster allowed a tiny handful of German survivors, we're talking maybe 200 men, to hold up the entire British advance for 6 critical hours. And that was just enough time for German reserves to race to the scene and slam the door shut.
The battle was over 3 days later. The breakthrough was contained. The trench lines settled right back where they were. But the shockwaves from this short, violent fight would ripple through the rest of the war and beyond.
And this is the brutal, heartbreaking math of that legacy. Just look at the cost. Nearly 20,000 casualties combined, for a gain of just 2 kilometers of shell-pounded mud. That initial tactical victory came at a horrific price for what turned out to be almost zero strategic gain. You know, the French commander-in-chief, Joseph Joffre, he summed it up perfectly at the time. He said, "Mais ce fut un succès sans lendemain." What that means is, but it was a success with no tomorrow, a brilliant flash in the pan that led absolutely nowhere.
The first major consequence was actually political. The sheer volume of ammunition fired at Neuve Chapelle, something like 30% of the entire First Army's supply, exposed a critical shortage. This discovery sparked a huge political scandal back in Britain called the Shell Crisis, which actually brought down the government and forced the entire British economy to reorganize for total war.
But the most devastating legacy was tactical. The generals looked at Neuve Chapelle and they learned the completely wrong lesson. They ignored the communication failures and the chaos, and they focused only on that incredible initial breakthrough. They concluded that the formula, a massive artillery barrage followed by a massive infantry assault, was the key to victory. And that method became the bloody blueprint for battles like the Somme and Passchendaele, where it would be repeated but on a monstrously larger and deadlier scale.
And that really leaves us with a final, chilling question. The British absolutely learned from Neuve Chapelle, but did those lessons lead to a smarter, better way of fighting, or did they just create a more efficient, more industrial-scale blueprint for slaughter? That question would haunt the rest of the war. Thanks for joining this explainer.